Welcome in, everybody. This is episode 140 of Calibrated with Scott. I am Scott, of course. I can see from my chat already, people don't understand what quotes are and how they are used in sarcasm. But whether you think I'm being sarcastic or not, Putin did actually agree that a ceasefire is the right idea. It's the right path moving forward. But as I've explained multiple times on this podcast, that has been Russia's position for 3 years now, going on into its third year. So this is nothing new. We're going to go over all of the ceasefire talk. The U.S. envoy Witikoff landed in Moscow yesterday, where he had a meeting with the Russian delegation. Pertaining to negotiations on Ukraine. They had discussions about, U.S.-Russian relations moving forward, how the war in Ukraine might play out, stuff like that. So we're going to get on all of that today. We have a lot to talk about. And to start it off, we're just going to go over a few updates. Today's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, just because there's not as much to talk about, but I wanted to come on and talk about this specifically because this is some pretty big news. Hello from Pakistan. Nice to see you in here, my man. Azam, good to see you. If you guys want to tell me where you're at, I always like to see that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some of the map updates we have. Not a whole bunch of map updates today, but some, and so we're going to talk about them. All right. Over here, south of Zaporozhye, near Orikhiv, where the Ukrainian 2023 counteroffensive took place on the Zaporozhye front, Russian forces have just made a small incremental change to the front line here, advancing in the direction of Kamansky, Stepove, Lobkove. So just a small advance here. Nothing particularly notable, but still an update. Moving over to the Velika Novoselka front line here, we can see that Russian forces have advanced and captured the village of Dnipro-Nehiria and have advanced in the direction of Vesele here. So another small advance coming out of this area. Moving over to the Andreevka, Pokrovsk sort of front. I'm actually calling this now the Velika Novoselka Udashny front until, it'll be the Pokrovsk front. But really, if you take a look, I can actually make this bigger. Sorry. If you take a look here, you can see that, Ugledar used to be where the front line was. Remember, this was a giant U shape back here that went up sort of this way. That is completely not the case anymore. Ugledar is now, I think almost 30, between 30 and 50 kilometers now behind the front line. So Ugledar is now in the very, very much in the rear. Velika Novoselka is now also in the rear of this front line. And you can see how the front line has more turned out, from a U shape down here into Ugledar, with Pokrovsk being the extreme rear of this front line for the Ukrainians, to now Pokrovsk is the front line. Ugledar is one of the very rear positions here. Donetsk very far back as well. And the front line is now, more north to south, east to west, this direction. If you know what I'm saying, instead of being like north to south here and then east to west outside of Donetsk, now it's north to south from Pokrovsk to Velika and then west. So this is more of the front heading towards Propasnaya now, like Pokrovsk was previously. So I'm looking at this front more directionally this way instead of, in terms of the encirclement of Pokrovsk itself. All right. My dog just opened my door and said hello. All right. Moving on. Here we have just a couple of small updates. Just again, these are not major Russian advances, just sort of frontline updates as things continue here. After the capture of Andrivka, we had another Russian advance to the north of Andrivka. I imagine most of this area in between these two advances has been captured, and it's more of a flat front line right here from Andrivka up to Nova Andrivka, but for now, we only have a geolocation here and here. So that means that on my map, at least, it just shows it like this. Likely the fields in between this area have also been captured, but that will be in an update to come later. Here in between the villages of Zaporizhia and Nadivka, we have another small Russian advance. Again, nothing major, heading in the direction of Preobrazhivka. Okay. All right. We have a couple of Ukrainian advances here. We had a geolocation right on the outside of this reservoir in the village of Shevchenko. Remember, I talked about Pokrovsk, this part of the Russian front line being at the absolute extent of logistics. Even outside of Seladove, you're looking at 20, 25 kilometers to the actual front. So very, very far to travel out of Seladove, out of your closest staging area, basically. I guess you could say you might use this as a staging area, but well within artillery and drone range here. This area is just very difficult for the Russians to operate in. And now that the Ukrainians have stopped feeding the Kursk salient, which we are also going to talk about here very shortly, they were able to move some units back to the Pokrovsk area, back to the Konstantinivka area, back to the Kupiansk area to sort of try to stabilize the situation. But, the damage has already been done. And we're going to now see the Ukrainians attempting to reinvest in the East defensively after taking massive losses due to the Kursk region, right? Like I talked about, the reason why this Velika Pokrovsk front is even here is because of the Kursk incursion. Right? The Russians have captured Kharkove since then. The Russians have captured Velika Novosilka since then. Seladove might have been a little bit before the Kursk operation. I can't exactly remember, but massive amounts of development in southern Donetsk because of the developments in Kursk. And that's just something that they are never going to be able to undo. And they've achieved nothing from the Kursk incursion. So militarily speaking, is probably one of the most desperate and ineffective operations of this conflict. All right, moving in. Ukrainian forces still attempting to penetrate into Toretsk. Remember, lots of gray zone on the outskirts of the city. Ukrainians keeping these Terracones in gray zone, so their ability to move into the city is greatly enhanced. As soon as the Russians gain access to those Terracones, that is all going to change. But, the Ukrainians are desperate for a PR win anywhere. And this is where we are currently seeing the active PR battle being fought for the Ukrainians. And you can tell because if you go onto Twitter or, I don't know, there's not a ton of Ukrainian telegrams that I read that are talking about Toretsk because they understand the reality of what's happening. But a lot of the copy, pro-Ukrainian accounts are talking about Toretsk like the Russians are being encircled and, blah, 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 nonsense. It's not particularly beneficial for them to do this, but they're going to keep doing it. So expect to keep hearing weird news out of Toretsk. All right. The Russian MOD had announced the capture of Novomakrove, which is across the canal north of Chasiv Yar. This would be a rather large advance in this sector. We don't see a ton of movement here since the capture of Bakhmut. Really not very much at all in this direction since, Wagner was here and stuff. So movement here is notable. And following the Russian MOD announcement of the capture of this village, Deep State announced that the Russians had advanced through these two forested areas here. So half of this update has been confirmed. The other half is still waiting for confirmation. Just to the north of that, more in the Seversk front, Russian forces have advanced along the road from Sacco e Vantazzi. It sounds like Italian. In the direction of Vasukovica down here. So again, not a major advance, but just a small advance into the village itself. Moving up into the Seversk area here, Bielorivka, Russian forces have advanced out again onto the high ground here. This is probably the most important advance in this entire area. Remember, the high ground runs from Bielorivka, follows this tree line right here all the way out. Once the Russians have captured all of this, they will be looking downhill at Seversk, and will be able to basically wrap up everything on the southern side of the Seversky Donetsk River right here. So important movement here, although, geography, or, like in terms of the population density, it's just fields. So, all right. Think that is it for the updates. I can't remember if I did this one. I think I did, and I just haven't removed it yet. Let me know if I did this, you guys. But Russia, I had mentioned multiple times that this was sort of an unknown area right here. Ukrainians seem to have pushed the Russians back into the Sinkivka area, up into this forestry. This area might not be exactly specific, but I had way over granted Russian territory into Kupiansk, and the front line has just receded since that time, but no geolocations available for updates. Nothing has changed on the bridgehead. Russians are still occupying the Kupiansk bridgehead. All right, moving up to the Kursk incursion zone. The village of Suja here has been completely captured by the Russians. That includes all of the smaller villages around it as well. There are now only 4 villages remaining under Ukrainian occupation in the Kursk region. Gogolivka, Oleshina, Gievo, and Gornal. Not the prettiest town names, if you ask me. But yeah, so you can see the pocket is almost completely non-existent now. The fact that the Ukrainians are still even in these 2 areas doesn't make much sense to me. We're looking at a total area, that the Ukrainians are maintaining right now, about 75 square kilometers, greatly down from the 400 a couple weeks ago and the 600 at the maximum extent of the Ukrainian Kursk incursion. It is all coming to a terrible, decisive end here, and I've been talking about this for so long. I made posts about the Ukrainians needing to get out in November of last year, basically. Nothing was being achieved. Nothing was happening. They were just pumping men in and losing territory elsewhere because of it. I talked about this over and over again. And I heard a lot of the people who, are more supportive of Ukraine saying this is a bargaining chip for negotiations, that this is somehow going to force the Russians to do something that they don't want to do. And the whole time I sat there and I was dumbfounded, because to me, I recognize patterns, and part of why my predictions are sometimes accurate, and more accurate than others, is because I don't make wild claims. I don't go way out of my way to insert my bias or insert my what I think should happen rather than what is happening and what is going to happen into a situation. And I see a lot of other people doing that. I made a post today about Colonel Douglas McGregor. He put out a tweet, which I don't even know if he's running his own Twitter. I don't know. But McGregor throughout the war has been consistently wrong. And I don't understand why people are so eager to listen to people like him or people like Scott Ritter, just because they're enthusiastic about the same bias that you hold doesn't mean that they're correct. They're just telling you things that you want to hear so that you continue to watch them wherever they go. It's what they're doing. And yeah, they're boomers. So when it comes to, talking about these things, I'm just going to tell you exactly what they are and how they're going to proceed. And from the start of this, we knew that this was a PR operation. How did we know that this was a PR operation? Because that's what the Ukrainians do. you guys have to start to learn to recognize patterns. I'm going to just take you through a couple of events throughout the SMO, and we're going to talk about how they played out and what happened. Does anybody remember what happened after the fall of Severodonetsk? Severodonetsk fell. This was one of the earliest battles of the war, the summer of 2022. The Russians ended up advancing into my gosh, I can never find this on the map. I've done this before. Oh my God. Papasnaya. Where's Papasnaya? It's somewhere right here. Oh, Papasnaya right here. So the Russians ended up advancing out to Papasnaya and then advancing up through these series of villages right here and trapped the Ukrainians in Lysychansk. The Ukrainians then, this was the first encirclement that was denied by the Ukrainian information space. This was the first time that the Ukrainians were pumping manpower outside of Mariupol. We're going to talk about Mariupol. Mariupol kind of was happening near the same time as this, but Mariupol was a specific case. This was not the same as Mariupol. Lysychansk was available to retreat from. The Ukrainians decided not to retreat. They stayed in the city. They took extreme losses in and out of the city as, Wagner from the south, Russian forces in Severodonetsk put in incredible pressure on Lysychansk. They then were routed out, and the front line leveled out around Bilohorivka after the Ukrainian counteroffensive in the Kharkov region. So that was the first case, right? This is not a pattern at this point. This is just a anecdote of the war. Then we move down to Bakhmut. Bakhmut was the second iteration. Soledar Bakhmut was the second iteration of this. And this was the one that really cemented it for me in the way that I perceive this war. Bakhmut was surrounded. The Russians were in the Bovo-Vasilivka over here, Kleshchivka, almost in Ivanivsky. There was the one road, this road right here, the 0506. It was the road of life. That term is going to be mentioned quite a bit here in this little portion of my speech. This road had pressure from the north and from the south on it. The Ukrainians were taking losses, not nearly the same as in Kursk, because the weapons weren't at the same level. We didn't have FPV drones flying all over the place. Lancets were the big deal during this time, and Lancets were much more expensive, but they were still operating. A lot of artillery. But again, Ukrainians forcing their way into Bakhmut, Soledar, becoming the victims of tunneling operations because they're so committed to staying in these areas that the Russians have enough time to say, oh, well, we're going to cut open a pipe and we're going to send guys down and clean out the whole pipe, and then, or salt mine or whatever it is. And we're going to utilize this to get behind you and take advantage of your stagnant defense posture, right? And so that's what we saw here, the 0506, the one road. The Russians left it open forever. The thing was, the Russians can't win the Battle of Bakhmut, blah, 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 blah. This was the narrative. The Russians used this narrative, destroyed the Ukrainian army here for months and months and months. It meant that the 2023 counteroffensive was much weaker, less dense in terms of manpower and equipment commitment, and it completely and totally failed. Set Ukraine back majorly after successes in Kherson and Kharkov. All right, moving down now. We saw a very similar thing happen in Avdiivka. So down here, where is Avdiivka? Right here. It's so far behind the lines now, it's hard to find it. Remember, the Russians had the industrial plant basically surrounded. The Terekon was captured, and the Ukrainians were using this 0542 highway into Avdiivka, surrounded, road of life. They got hammered here. They kept investing, and then they were routed out. Same thing happened again, right? We moved down to Ugledar. Same thing happened in Ugledar. Ugledar got surrounded. Ukrainians kept forcing manpower, trying to hold it, got surrounded, got actually physically encircled here, routed out. Same thing happened in the Kharkov pocket. Remember, Kharkov specifically was surrounded. The Russians were down on this side, one road of life in and out. And then this entire pocket became another pocket of the same deal, one road in and out. Velika Novosilka was the last one of these in the actual in country for Ukraine. Velika Novosilka, same thing. Russians got to the north, and on the south, there was actually no road in. The Ukrainians were using this dirt road right here to get in to town, taking extreme losses. And this one was the one that really started to see how these encirclements, the Russians were taking advantage of these encirclements because the Ukrainians were not able to have as easy of a time getting in and out of the city. There was FPVs, glide bombs are rampant now. Ukrainian air defense is much weaker. Russian reconnaissance drones are floating overhead all the time. It was sort of a different battle. And this is where we saw the Ukrainians really begin to hurt significantly because of their overcommitment in a much shorter period of time. Bakhmut took months and months and months and months to wear down the Ukrainian army. This wore down the Ukrainian army significantly faster, and they also lost the city significantly faster. Smaller city, but much more efficient Russian army that we're talking about. And now we go up to Kursk. And Kursk was the epitome of all of those battles I just talked about combined into one. A completely useless objective, a entirely politically motivated operation, no sound military direction or leadership. And after the initial success, the surprise success, instead of, honestly, if the Ukrainians would have just gone in and took all of those POWs and then got out, that would have probably been a bigger win than capturing the territory, holding it for 6 months, losing, between 30 and 50,000 men would be my estimate for this incursion time, which is basically like Bakhmut. I would say that this is probably one of the worst episodes in terms of Ukrainian losses of the entire war. And the reason for that is because of the geography of the area and just the nature of this incursion. They were invading a very sparsely populated area of the Russian border. No major city objectives other than Shuja here. They might have been going for the NPP, but that was a very lofty goal considering you're pushing into Russia itself. Again, pushing into Russia means that you have less defense capabilities, less air defense, stuff like that. The Ukrainians were just getting molested in this pocket for months and months and months, harassed from every angle, and the Russians let them stay, and the Russians continued to let them stay. And again, I'm going to go back to these arguments that I heard. Well, why aren't the Russians able to push the Ukrainians out of Kursk? Why would they? What was this at any point? What was this accomplishing for the Ukrainians? Political points? The Russians have been dealing with Ukrainian political points for the whole war. They don't give a shit. They don't care what the West says. They don't care. Why would they? It doesn't make any difference to them. And so they just continued to let this bleed. Let it bleed, let it bleed, let it bleed, let it bleed like they did in Bakhmut. Let it bleed like they did in Severodonetsk, Lysychansk. Let it bleed like they did in Ugledar, Kharkov, Velika Novosilka, Mariupol, right? Mariupol was a little bit different. They were totally surrounded and cut off early in the war. A little bit different. Didn't even mention that battle. But again, the political inability to be flexible in these situations is causing catastrophe for their military. And again, we're seeing it here. And the worst part about it is the pro-Ukrainian information space is not being critical of the Ukrainian military and political leadership, which is the biggest problem that that side has, is that when, when the pro-Russians see something they don't like, they get very vocal and they whine and they bitch and they cry more than any group of people I have ever met in my entire life, to a fault. They are doomers to a fault. Ukrainians are optimists and ignorists to an extreme fault. And it is going to not have good ramifications later on. Talking about the actual control, as I said, Russian forces have closed most of the pocket, have captured most of the area, and then the urban area, and then over here in the Sumy region, Russian forces have advanced again, closer to the village of Besivivka. So Kursk about wrapped up. What a complete and total disaster. I really have been just hammering this point home for 6 months, and I'm so glad that this point is still exactly 100% correct. Kursk was a disaster. It was a disaster from the after they surrounded those 100 Russian National Guard, guys, and they paraded them all around for that 3 days. They claimed that they had some 5,000 captured, whatever. They just kept taking the same group of guys and taking pictures with them everywhere. After that whole spiel happened, nothing has gone the Ukrainian way in Kursk. And that was in October or something like that. So yeah, that's really that's the gist of this whole thing. And I would not be surprised if the Russians now push into the Sumy region after this and force Ukrainian presence in this region basically permanently. And this is what we talked about, right? This was never a hot spot for the Ukrainians until they decided to go on the incursion here. They ended up losing a ton of territory here, which was much more important to them. Now they are removing men from this area, sending them back down here. The Russians are just going to keep pushing here, and keep doing the same thing that they've been doing the entire time. All right, guys, that's it for my updates today. On the map, let's see. UA has enemy at the gate sort of mindset. Yep, every battle is a Stalingrad. Every battle is the Battle of Britain. Every battle, it is that exact mindset. Is the Kursk route a tactical or strategic victory? Tactical. The Kursk situation has not been strategic since the second the Ukrainians stopped advancing. The second the Ukrainians stopped advancing in Kursk in August or November, whenever it happened, that is the exact moment that the entire battle became tactical in nature, right? There are no strategic objectives to achieve for the Ukrainians anymore. They're just holding on to the tactical bit of ground they had in Kursk for, I guess you could say, strategic reasons in terms of a bargaining chip. But the Russians were never going to go for that. So really, it was never a bargaining chip. It was never really a strategic issue. It would be a strategic victory for the Russians, I would say, in that the Ukrainians wasted so much manpower and time in that pocket that the Russians were able to achieve strategic victories elsewhere. Kharkov, Velika Novosilka, places that would have rather have taken, the opposite way. If Kursk wouldn't have happened, those cities would have taken months and months and months to capture compared to what they ended up being, the time that they ended up taking to capture. So thank you guys for your questions. All right. Does anybody have anything to say before we get into the big discussion? I'll look over here. Oh, Russia already lost the war. They just need to give up and pay for everything they destroyed. Okay. Well, that's not what the U.S. says. That's not what Europe says. That's not what Ukraine says. And that's not what Russia says. So have fun in that boat by yourself, friend. Let's see. Scott, you were correct. Please gloat. I will gloat eventually, friend. I will gloat eventually. I think that since Zaluzhny was replaced, military problems started to pile up. It wasn't Zaluzhny's. I mean, it has nothing to do with who's in the military position. They're just yes men. Whoever's in that spot is just a yes man. The war has also changed so much from Zaluzhny to Sursky. You're talking about like Russian glide bombs, Lancets, FPV drones were not a thing back then. The whole battlefield has wildly shifted and advanced compared to that time. So you're seeing Sursky deal with problems that Zaluzhny never dealt with in terms of manpower constraints and stuff like that. We started to see that maybe at the very end of Zaluzhny's time, but Zaluzhny might have looked so competent because he had so much reserves to expend, equipment, money, manpower, good faith. Even just Zaluzhny, when he told somebody that he was doing something, they believed him. When Sursky tells somebody that they're doing something, it's 3 years into the war and they've been led by the nose by the Ukrainians plenty of times before. They know the reality of the situation. So it might seem like Zaluzhny is more capable, but I don't know. I don't particularly think so. I think he was incompetent, like most other military leadership that was elected during any time of peace. I think you are completely right about Putin and Trump playing a game of hot potato right now. It's all about who's to blame for the peace failing. Yes, we're going to talk about that right now. So, okay. So, you guys got upset about the clickbaity title, Putin agrees. I didn't think it was too clickbaity. I thought it was exactly on to what happened. So, the U.S. envoy to Russia arrived in Moscow yesterday to have talks about U.S.-Russian relations, about a possible ceasefire in Ukraine, stuff like that. I've been telling you guys for weeks and weeks and weeks since Trump basically said he was going to solve this on day one, that's not going to happen. The European position, the Ukrainian position, the U.S. position, and the Russian position are all so far removed from each other. They're not even in the same dimension of reality, right? The Ukrainians are still talking about the Russians not staying in Ukraine, which is just unbelievable. Like, I can't believe they're still, talking like this. But after the Ukrainian-U.S. meeting in Riyadh, I actually don't know if it was in Riyadh. It might have been in a different city in Saudi Arabia, but I'm not sure. They had a meeting where they basically, I think, behind closed doors, signed a mineral deal, all for all intensive purposes, which was the U.S. goal was just to get something out of this whole Ukraine project. Now they have a mineral deal, which they're going to be able to do whatever with. But the real big part of those talks, the U.S.-Ukrainian talks, was that the Ukrainians had, I guess, come to a position where they were willing to accept territorial losses to the Russians in exchange for ceasefire or peace. Unfortunately, as the Russians have said for months and years, a temporary ceasefire to the Ukraine conflict is not a permanent solution. They have gone through temporary ceasefires. They have gone through long-term ceasefires that were actually meant to, appropriate long-term peace, but it didn't end up ever happening because people on both sides broke those agreements. Minsk 1, Minsk 2, and Istanbul. It's very clear that the West doesn't really want negotiations to work out. If they did, they would continue doing things like not militarily supplying Ukraine, not giving them intelligence, which they have just renewed after whatever happened in Saudi Arabia happened between the U.S. and Ukraine. I think it was a mineral deal. Everything went back to normal, right? Everything went back to Biden era Ukraine status. We're now delivering military aid through Poland as usual. Just like before, we are giving intelligence just as before. It's all just theater, guys. They're just putting it in front of your face. Starlink was never shut off, right? There was the rumors that Starlink was going to be shut off. Elon came out and said, no, Ukraine would collapse without Starlink. It's not going to be turned off. I'm not going to do that. That would be the way to bring Ukraine to the negotiating table. Give them no option, right? But the U.S. isn't going to do that because that's not the U.S.'s plan. What the U.S. really wants right now is a ceasefire so that Ukraine can continue mobilizing for 30 days, continue arming, reestablish themselves, figure out the whole Kursk situation. Every single time the Ukrainians get into a horrible situation, they come to the negotiating table. It is another pattern that everybody needs to recognize. They did it in Ilyavansk. I can't remember. I don't know how to say the name of it. Basically, 2014, this happened when the Ukrainians got surrounded and they were about to die, right? 2015, same thing happened again. The Ukrainians got surrounded. One starts with an I or an L, I believe, one of the towns, and the other one is it starts with a D. I'm not going to try it because I don't have the names in front of me, so I'm not going to go into them. I've studied these battles. I was there watching them when they were occurring, not in Ukraine, but on the internet. And every single time, that was Minsk 1, that was Minsk 2. The Russians were right outside of Kiev. We got the Istanbul agreements. The Russians backed away, which, in my mind, I think that the Russians were wildly overextended. We saw that in Kharkov. We saw that in Kherson. I don't think they could have stayed around Kiev anyway. But The Russians did pull back from Kiev after those Istanbul negotiations, and then the Ukrainians didn't follow through with those. So to go and make another ceasefire deal right now, or make any even talking to the Ukrainians, is just a fool's errand. The Russians know that, and as somebody had said, I had put out a tweet basically that this is really just a political or a game of diplomatic hot potato. The United States does not want to be blamed for the failure of peace in Ukraine, especially with Trump's rhetoric towards achieving peace in Ukraine. And if you want to continue the war, the best way to do that is show that the Ukrainians are willing to work towards peace, the Americans are willing to work towards peace, but the Russians are not. So they come up with this deal that looks really good to the average idiot who doesn't know anything about the Ukraine war. Oh, the ball is in Putin's court for a 30-day peace agreement that will just end up ending in complete failure. We know this. That's why we're presenting this to the Russians, because we know they're going to turn it down. And then when they turn it down, we can say, oh, look, it's the Russians, not the Ukrainians, not the Americans who want this war to continue. And so we're going to have to allow the war to continue with our support, right? We can't allow the Ukrainians to lose. We can't allow Russia to win. Whatever. It's just the default position is how you should really look at this. And so Putin did agree. Putin agreed with a lot of what was written down in this ceasefire agreement: the need for peace, the need for reduction in hostilities, the need for everybody to come to the table. But he prefaced it, or he put an asterisk by it and said, but there are preconditions, and the Russians have already laid out our preconditions. And so basically what he just did was he took this potato, right? I related it to a firework, right? They're playing hot potato with a firework, like an M80. They got it in their hand and they're just tossing it back and forth, tossing it back and forth. Oh, you want peace? Oh no, you don't want peace. Oh no, you don't want peace. Oh no, you don't want peace, right? And just back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And for Putin, it doesn't matter. He can do this forever because the Russians are winning. The Ukrainians don't have that luxury. They've already lost their bargaining chip in Kursk. They're going to continue losing cities in the east. And this is just going to the Ukrainian negotiating position is getting worse and worse. So from the Russian position, drag it out as long as you want. Keep pulling or leading the U.S. by the nose, I would say, about these negotiations, because the U.S. knows that they need this. They know that they cannot maintain this fight. They know that that Europe is not going to be able to maintain this fight, and they know that it doesn't really adhere to their geostrategic interests anymore in terms of Russia being an adversary, right? Cheap Russian energy into Europe, weakening China's position is exactly what the U.S. wants, and that's what they're failing to achieve through this. So they would love a reversal of relations between the U.S. and Russia. However, I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that all the masks have been pulled down. Everybody can see what's going on. So yeah, I just don't see that really playing out in that sort of way. All right, let me see here. Did U.S. intel pause contribute to Kursk collapse? No, absolutely not. In fact, I don't even think that ever happened. I'm going to be real honest. I don't think that there was ever a second where intel wasn't being shared. I think that it might have gone from legitimate U.S. intel sharing to third-party private company intel sharing. Private companies, AWACSs, were flying outside of Ukraine on the western border. So this is you guys, I really think that everybody, if you bought any of what has happened since Trump got into office, congratulations, you've bought into the theater. That's basically what's going on, and that's what I've been saying from the very start. And would you look at that? I was right again. There you go. There's your gloat. Scott is not Jewish. I don't know. Has my page been demonetized yet? Nope. Suspicious to say the least. Will Putin agree or not? No, he will not agree. He will not agree to the ceasefire with the terms that the United States brought to Russia. Absolutely not. He made that very clear. If you read his 7-minute speech, he made it abundantly clear that this is not going to happen. And as of today, the U.S. has just tightened sanctions on Russian oil and financial. Can talk about peace all you want, but all I see behind the scenes is both sides moving towards the continuation of this war. Can you analyze what a Sumi campaign would look like? Yeah, I can for sure, man. Let's go over to Sumi. So much like I would suggest that any Sumi operation would look exactly like this. This is exactly what I thought the Kharkov operation was going to look like when it started. A lot of people thought the Russians were going for Kharkov. I said that makes no goddamn sense. That is a huge city. They got much bigger problems over here to deal with, bigger fish to fry. That was when Avdiivka was going on. Ukrainians ended up pulling a ton of reserves up to Vovchansk, which allowed greater Russian freedom. What I did not expect was the Ukrainians to go into Kursk, the exact opposite of the Vovchansk incursion, in my opinion. Except I believe that this one was actually trying to achieve more, get up here to Lvov, but that's neither here nor there now. A Russian offensive would look almost exactly like that, but over here, push into these villages around outside of Sumi. Particularly, the primary goal would be Yanakivka. Although the Ukrainians have very sturdy defenses, a lot of trench networks in this area. This area is quite built up. So, I think it would be quite difficult for the Russians to actually achieve major success here. Although, if the opportunity presents itself to push into this region and force a Ukrainian contingent to stay not defending the east, why not? Right? If it works, it works. The Russians are still doing it in Vovchansk, and they've been doing it there for of quite some time. Ukraine successfully launched counteroffensives in Pokrovsk and Toretsk. Okay, let's go look. We can talk about this, Jimmy. Here we go. Yeah. So if you look at Deep State map, actually, I can take you over to Deep State map. Let me use a Ukrainian sourced map, so you don't get to just call bias or whatever on my map. That's fine. I'll use Deep State. That works better. All right, here we go. Doot. Okay, so let's go look at Toretsk. His map has not changed significantly at all, really. He's updated this part, but let's see. Let's go over the past couple of days. No changes, no changes, no changes, no changes, no changes, right? Can you see any changes to Toretsk? Nope. Why do you think that is? Because nothing has changed here. It's the same as it has been. The only difference is that the Ukrainians, I think, have slightly more control over these terikons than previously. I think they were more in the gray zone than they were. But the Ukrainians, you can see the areas where the Ukrainians are able to push in through the gray zone here, push into these little houses, and then push down into here. Nothing has changed. The Russians are not concerned. There's no Russian sources even talking about this. And every geolocation you see of Ukrainian forces in the city is them dying. So, no, there are no successful counterattacks going, or there are counterattacks going on, but there are no successful counteroffensives happening anywhere. We can go over to, let's go over to the Pokrovsk front here. And we can see, actually, because they leave it in blue, because it's a Ukrainian source map, all of the progress made by Ukrainians here. Yeah, this is a couple hundred meters off the front line. This is a couple hundred meters off the front line, and this is a couple hundred meters off the front line, right? So they've advanced to the depth of a football field here and there, a couple football fields here and there, maybe. And that is out of Pokrovsk, their logistic hub, right? Compared to the Russians back here in Seladove. So, yeah. Sure, they're counterattacking in some very tight specific areas and suffering losses because of it, not achieving anything. Why are you coping like this? How have you not learned your lesson? Again and again and again and again. You think after somebody beat this dead horse into your brain for 3 years, you would understand what's going on. But some people are just beyond help. Thank you, Jimmy, for making my content much smoother and easier. Holy shit, that's easy to do. God, I love just dismantling people's stupid arguments. It's so fun. Just because it's like they're not even thought through to the shallowest level. We already answered that one. Putin should say the ball is now in the U.S.'s court. Yeah, that's that's exactly what I said. You should that's what I said. Somebody would say because somebody who doesn't understand what's going on. That's what all the pro-Ukrainians said. Oh, the ball's in Putin's court. Let's see if he wants peace. So stupid, bro. People are just like genuinely fucking retarded, and the fact that everybody has a platform is awesome. I love it because you get to see the funniest dog water takes all day, but it's also extremely tiresome reading people's inner monologues that are just not worth the light of day. Okay. I think the war will continue to 2027. Yep. Debits. Yeah, I say I don't know how to say that, but that is the name of the the first, or this one of the encirclements that the Ukrainians got in 2014 and 2015. Russia always broke ceasefire. What ceasefire? What the fuck are you talking about? What ceasefire did they break? They didn't break Minsk. One or two, if that's what you're referring to. All right, let me get down into some questions here. Question. So will Trump's Congress now vote for another package for Ukraine as Biden's money is about to run out? I don't know. This is where we're going to see how the U.S. is going to go about it, because I still believe that the U.S. wants to pivot and put put Europe in charge of this. And I think we're going to see something happen here diplomatically in the next couple of weeks that's going to lend exactly to that. So yeah, I would say be prepared for that. I don't know if the U.S. is going to directly continue supplying, but they will do it through Europe, basically through a third party, if they don't do it themselves. By the way, it's crazy how Name isn't in here anymore. Remember when Name was in here and he was telling me that Trump was going to abandon Ukraine? Do you guys remember that? And then he kept saying it over and over again and saying that I was fragile. And I just kept telling him wait because nothing has happened. And he should wait until everything plays out. Yeah. And he timestamped it too. And I went back and I watched it, and I was saying exactly what was going to happen. I said, the U.S. wants to pivot to China, but they're not going to abandon Ukraine because Ukraine is geostrategic to Europe, and Europe is geostrategic to the United States. So yeah. Easy. Bet one. God damn, dude. I love this. It's so fun. Voldemort. I'll say it all I want, dude. Name can show up. I want him to show up. I want him to be here because he's wrong, and he needs. And when people are wrong and they think that they're right, they know that they're right, but then they're wrong. You really have to burn it into their brains, or no lessons will be learned. So, Name committed Sudoku. I would not doubt it. Be honest, Jimmy is your alt account. Yeah, I'm literally tweeting at myself right now just to set myself up for dingers. Are you talking about yourself? Yes, Jimmy, you are me. I am talking about myself. We are us. Questions. The advance in Zaporozhye, is that probing defenses, or is Russia trying to draw troops to the region? Probably a little bit of both. Nothing ever happens. There you go. Jimmy is actually MV. Wow. That would be a deep cut. Man, that is a deep cut in and of itself. I haven't heard from MV in forever. I hope he's doing good. You say Kursk troops will be relocated to the Donbass, but what if Russia won't leave Sumy? Then they won't leave Sumy. So the thing is that the Russians, the reason why I said that they're going to be moved away is just because you don't need that many troops in that area anymore, right? You are dealing with an active Ukrainian operation in the region. If you have your own operation going on, you'll have the allotted troops for that, but it's not going to be as necessary. You're not covering a massive new front line. The front line, like if you think about it, the front line into Sumy is going to be only a couple 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 kilometers long, right? The front line in the Kursk region was hundreds of kilometers long. So you need a much better army or a much larger army contingent to defend that area. Now it's shrinking, it's gone. You can move a lot of those troops away. But here's the thing is the Russians aren't dealing with issues where they have to allot troops to certain parts of the front and take them away from others. The Russians are enjoying such a numerical advantage at this point that that's not really an issue. They've been rotating across the entire front line very regularly. There is no shortage of troops anywhere. This is, again, another one of these talking points by the pro-Ukrainian groups because of it's just cope for why they're doing so poorly in Kursk, right? Oh, well, we pulled Russian troops away. Oh, well, we're counterattacking in Pokrovsk and Toretsk, which I just covered, is absolutely nothing. And even if it was something, why? Ask yourself, why would the Ukrainians want to be attacking right now? Did their manpower issues go away? No. So they're exposing themselves on offensive operations to get deleted at a higher rate. Okay. How does that work against the Russians? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? All you have to do is think very logically and just with the basic amount of common sense, and everything will work out. So no, I mean, they could stay and you could see a much bigger operation in the Sumy region. I think that could be very beneficial for the Russians if they can get through the defenses and not take significant losses in doing so. My Jewish bro, when are you going your sideburns? I already have them. They're there. The only hair I have is sideburns. Do you want me to grow them out like super long? I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if my hair will do that. It'll be like, it won't be curly either. It'll be like rock hair, like long blonde. I used to have long hair when I was young, long blonde hair that just comes right from here down, and then I will curl it. It'll look like girl hair. That's funny. I'm Russian. Keep in mind, my friends in the army get rotation this month. Almost 300 got rotation. Yeah, exactly. The Russians are rotating out quite frequently. Odessa, if the war continues, it's always a possibility, my friend. Anything can happen. The longer the war goes on, the better the odds. Kalibrated. How many troops would Russia and Ukraine redeploy after Kursk ends? Well, I don't think the Ukrainians are really going to be able to redeploy very many troops that they already haven't pulled out. But the Russians, like I said, they don't need to move the troops anywhere. There's some good units in that area. The new Rubicon drone unit too has just been annihilating the Ukrainians leaving that pocket. So they could get moved somewhere. You could see things like that happen. I wouldn't really expect a ton of change. Like, there won't be a lot of visible change after the Kursk operation unless something begins immediately. We are entering the spring months, so get ready. The Russians could be looking for another offensive somewhere. Despite having 4 NFL teams that are much closer to your hometown in terms of proximity, Broncos, Cardinals, Cowboys, Raiders, why do you choose to support them? Because my family's from Kansas. My mom's family's from Kansas. I spent a ton of time in Kansas, about an hour outside of Kansas City. So I'm a KU fan. I'm a Wichita fan. Scott Ritter is more smart than you, Scott. At least I don't touch kids or whatever, whatever. Why do I support them? Yeah, just family. And because, bro, could you imagine being a Broncos fan? I just had to deal with Peyton Manning beating my team a bunch when I was a little kid. That's when I first started becoming a Chiefs fan. For like I started paying attention to football. Was right before Peyton and then during Peyton Manning's time in Denver. So also, I don't particularly like Denver. Cardinals suck. Cowboys are trash. And the Raiders are our arch nemesis, so I could never be their fan. Also, the Raiders used to be in Oakland, which was way farther away, and now they're in Las Vegas, so it's a little different. You are a Jew, Scott. Why don't you support your Jewish brother Zelensky? Many Jewish communities in Ukraine are suffering because of Russia. First off, no, they aren't. My Jewish brothers in Ukraine are doing just fine. I don't know what that even means. And because I think if I was really Jewish, I would support actual Judaism and not the abhorrent manifestation that elites use Judaism to that, like Israel's doing. I don't think that that's real Judaism. I don't think Bibi Netanyahu is a real Jew. I think that he's a sociopath or a psychopath who runs a genocidal country. Like that's what I think. So no, I don't think there's any Jews suffering because of Russia. I don't know what you're talking about. In fact, most of the time people say Putin is way too pro-Israel. So I don't know what you're even going on about there. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. Do you think there is a meaning to life? Why not resolve the Ukraine war with nuclear apocalypse? I don't think there's a meaning to life. I think we each make our own meaning, and that's what makes humans so special and in particular. I believe that our main purpose here is reproduction. I think that's my position. I think that's why you see human beings doing the evil, horrible things we do to each other. It's just because we are animals that still haven't gotten rid of that animalistic nature. But we're smart enough to conceptualize all of it and understand all of it and understand that it's bad or whatever. So no, I do not think that there is a singular meaning to life. I think that life is what you make of it. And why not resolve it with nuclear apocalypse? Why not? I mean, it's the same as any other resolution to anything. I mean, maybe not because you don't want human civilization to collapse, but maybe you do. Who knows? I'm kind of a go with the flow sort of guy, I see opportunity everywhere. If a nuclear apocalypse happens and I happen to survive it, yeah, I just became a much more important person in my population group, humanity. I also have the opportunity to become like a warlord or something like that, like something real powerful, or I get instantly evaporated. So glass half full about everything, guys. Keep it real. Scott, we're not in Kansas anymore. That is true. Scott Ritter has been wrong a lot. Yes, he has. Most of the very loud accounts on both sides have been very wrong throughout the entirety of the war. This is just a regular position. Anybody who is bombastically talking about the situation, whether it's pro-Ukrainian or pro-Russian, Denny Davios or whatever his name is, Scott Ritter, Colonel McGregor. I mean, you can just go look at their history. You can go look at their tweets. It's pretty horrible. They have a lot more flag flying and curse on tweets than I do. Let's just put it like that. Did he touch kids? Who knows? That's what the government says. I don't trust the government, but also twice. He's been caught in stings 2 separate times. So for me personally, I just won't associate with it because so that's just my position. You guys do whatever you want to do. I don't care. How did you get into military coverage, Scott? I watched about 40 people get burned alive in Odessa when I was 15 or 14 or something like that. And ever since then, I've just had a hankering for geopolitics and military affairs. And not just with Ukraine, but all over the place. I really was getting into global news and stuff at that time. And then I was sitting there in my psychology class. And I just watched this building burn with people inside of it. And I was like, holy crap, this is something that I want to pay attention to. Scott, what state are you in? Empire State, baby. I'm in New Mexico. Denver is a shit city full of hobos. Yes, it is. I hate Denver. I go there regularly. My brother lives in Denver. Denver is the absolute worst place I've ever drove in my entire life. It's like Seattle. Like Seattle and Denver are like these two abominations where They don't have enough space, and the roads are just trash. This guy has to be a troll. If you're talking about me, for sure, bro. All I do is troll. All I do is I sit here and troll. I troll with my map. I troll with all of my posts. You can definitely see that I'm just trolling 24/7. Troll, 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 troll. Oh, Scott, now you're against genocide. I've always been against genocide. I've been against genocide in Gaza since the day it started happening. I'm against the genocide in Armenia as well. You want to point to a genocide that I'm in favor of? I would love to see the clip of me saying, yeah, genocide is good. This is such a stupid position, man. I love it how all of you with no actual comprehension of my position come in here and talk like that about me. It's awesome. Yes, yeah, for sure, bro. I'm pro genocide. What the fuck are you talking about? Where is Russia carpet bombing? I have yet to see any carpet bombing happen. I would like to see some carpet bombing happenings just so I can be like, oh, that's the first time I've seen carpet bombing this war. When have you seen a Russian bomber fly over Ukraine? There's no carpet bombing happening. What are you talking about? It's like every single time you say something, you're just wrong. It's impressive almost. What is your opinion on Khazar milkers? I imagine you're talking about boobs. I'm all about boobs, dude. I don't know what that is though. Yeah, carpet bombing. Exactly. What? Exactly. What is he talking about? Question. How do you enjoy living in one of the highest altitude cities in the United States? And since there are so many mountains around you, do you enjoy hiking? Yeah, the hiking around here is actually really, really nice, especially early morning. Living in the high desert, it stays cold. I like it. I like living in the one of the highest altitude cities, because when I go to other cities, I feel like Superman for like a day and a half. It's pretty cool. Like if you run here and you can train here, like when I was doing sports, I played high level soccer, like national level soccer for like 13 years or 12 or 13 years. And when we would go to like LA for like nationals every year, I always felt like Superman playing out there. Like I could run so far and fast. It was awesome. Do you think Israel have to rely on Putin's support in Syria? No. I can't believe the Russians are still in Syria, to be honest. But that the whole Syria thing is there's so many sides to it. There's so much going on. There's so many hands in that pot. No, Israel is going to keep doing whatever they want to do there. The Russians seem more inclined to protect Syrian populations from the current regime, which is good. So yeah, I don't know. Do you think Putin may agree to a ceasefire during Easter? No, I don't think there's going to be any ceasefires. The world's gone in 2 hours if there's an apocalypse of the nuclear variety. Yeah, which is pretty cool. It's really cool that humans can destroy themselves in that tiny period of a time. That's how cool human beings are. We literally brought the sun to Earth. And then we're like, we should just maybe threaten to use this against each other all the time. It's so cool. Instead of, creating unlimited free energy for everybody or something so stupid like that. Off topic, but are you a firearms owner? Yes. Do I have any unique firearms? No. No, nothing like unique as in like, I mean, my friend Charlton, this kid I went to high school with, this kid he's like a gun collector. He has every gun. He has like 13 different Mosins. He has like this Japanese World War II parachute gun that the stock breaks off. It like breaks in half. He's got all of the unique guns that you're talking about. He has so many different guns. It's so cool. Me, I just have my guns that I use, right? So I have my carry, and I have a hunting rifle. and then an AR as well. So I want to get an AK, but they're so expensive. The ones I want are so goddamn expensive. Question: Will you be playing Elder Ring? I have never played an Elder Ring game. I've never played a Dark Souls game ever. I'm about it. I'll try it. I've watched them all the way through. Like I've watched people play them all the way through. I have a hard time getting into games like that. I like the aesthetic of them though, and I like the fight component, but I just don't play them. Already answered that one. What do you think about the news of Kellogg suspended from negotiations? He was basically, I'm pretty sure he was being a complete obstacle in all of these negotiations. He's way too pro-Ukrainian. He's a full neocon. So basically, to even have this sit-down conversation for Putin to say no, the U.S. had to sideline him, which, is good if you want peace. But do you work with Dee Dee before she got doxxed? Yes, I did. I did not know anything about her. I just worked on the Telegram. And then when it all came out, I was already very much removed from that Telegram group. Close to South Park, Colorado? Kind of. Question, you think there's going to be a land corridor at the end of the war? A land corridor to where? Odessa and Transnistria and Moldova? Potentially. Depends, like I said, how long the war goes. Already answered that one. Make an episode with Brian. I plan on it. He can't come on all the time, or you guys would just get so tired of us talking about the same thing. What are the prospects of this conflict turning into World War III? It's always there, but I would say low. I don't think anybody makes money off of World War III. And I don't think you're going to have that happen until either somebody gets put into a position where they have absolutely no choice but to initiate that, or it happens accidentally. But I think that we're kind of past most of the accidents at this point, just in terms of the ability for us to get multiple satellite readings. So there's not going to be like a 1983 sort of situation where, the Soviets thought the US had launched missiles and it was like 5 ICBMs out of Wyoming. Didn't even make any sense. Like that sort of stuff is not really going to happen this day and age. You may have a mistake. I don't know. But there's always the chance of it happening. And if there's an active conflict going on, the chance is obviously higher. But I don't think we're any closer now than we were throughout most of the Cold War, I would say. Scott, can you please ignore that bot? Absolutely not, dude. That you don't understand. If you look at it from my position, these people helped me really build what I have today. And I have to give them some penance, right? Every time they come in here and they waste their own time to come in here and try to disagree with me and be wrong 24/7. No, I have built a little empire for myself on the backs of people telling me that I'm wrong and telling me that blah 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 blah, whatever, propagandist, whatever, this, that, and the other. And I just keep being right over and over again. And so no, I'm going to keep utilizing these people as long as they want to keep staying here and keep hanging out and saying stupid shit. Just like I entertained your comment, although you're not being annoying. So I appreciate that. Welcome in. Thank you for being in here. Also, this is the end. I mean, we're at 1 hour and 8 minutes. I'm just going through and enjoying spending some time talking to you guys. So famous pro-genocide Jewish troll Scott, Kalibrated Scott, third cousin of Ukrainian president. Scott is a weightlifter, probably does not have man boobs like you do. I have some big old titties, though. I got some big old pectoral muscles. Are you talking about Colorado or Seattle? Both. I don't like either of them. All right, here we go. Does Russia have a Fab 9000? And are the KH-101s guided missiles? Yes. Uh, any of the missiles that you're talking about with any like KH in front of them in that designation are all going to be guided missiles. Yeah, no, those are cruise missiles. They have internal guidance. Absolutely. Russia does have Fab 9000s, although the aircraft, the airframe used to drop them is completely unrealistic to be used over Ukraine, and to put a guidance kit on it, it's just too much. It would be so much more beneficial for you to drop 9 Fab 500s with guidance kits and just saturate an area instead of one Fab 9000. The only reason you would use a Fab 9000 is if there was a particular specific area that you just had to drop the biggest explosion on for some reason. I could see it it being used for um like some sort of massive industrial facility. Like if they wanted to drop it on Azovstal or something like that, I could see that happening. But yeah, realistically, no, there's not really a use for that. You can just use multiple smaller munitions and do a lot more damage with them. It's Scott's bot anyway, so exactly. I control all of the critics in here. I'm Jewish, guys. I control it all. The weather, everything, whatever I want. Do you see a possibility for a strategic cyber offensive conducted by Russia, as in hundreds of thousands of troops? Hundreds of thousands, no. Tens of thousands, absolutely. Which would be far greater than any offensive you've seen since early 2022, and which would easily overwhelm any Ukrainian position. You could definitely see that. I think that the Ukrainians are very weak right now. So really, there's not going to need to be a massive Russian commitment any one place. Anywhere where the Russians commit, if they achieve a breakthrough, they're going to be able to capitalize on that success. I don't think they're going to do that, though, because I think the Russians have cemented themselves into this plan of slow attrition and winning the war the way they want to win it. Scott, what are your thoughts on the arrest of ex-Philippine president on ICC? Well, I don't think anybody even cares about the ICC anymore. So I don't know I haven't read anything about this. I don't know what he was arrested for. But the ICC is now not abided by the United States or Russia. So sorry, my dog's barking. Do you know who controls the islands in Dnieper? It's sort of gray zone 50-50. Russians control some of them. Ukrainians control some of them. Did you follow the hijacking of the train by the terrorists? I saw it, man. That shit's just so sad. Just civilians dying. I have a hard time with that stuff. So I did see it, but you know, that's the kind of stuff that gets to me a little bit. People don't get war of attrition, not about land. Yeah, and this is exactly part of like the whole when I talked about Ukrainians falling into the same trap over and over again. Yeah, the Ukrainians don't seem to understand that it's about attrition and not territory, because they hold territory like it's worth more than gold. All right, guys. That's what I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. An hour and 13 minutes for episode 140. Putin agrees. I'm sorry you guys didn't like that title. Obviously, Putin does not agree to a ceasefire. He agrees to the idea of a ceasefire. Everybody, you have a fantastic day. Thank you for being in here. I'm going to probably try to do another live stream on Saturday if anything changes. If not, I might try to have Brian on or somebody on for that Saturday show. I might do a roundtable. We'll see. I got some ideas in store. So thank you guys so much. Thank you to all of my critics in here. I appreciate you guys. You give me free content. Thank you to all of my supporters more than my critics. I appreciate you guys more than you know. I just don't like to make fun of you because you're actually intelligent and listening and have common sense. So take care, be safe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.